So, some of you are probably looking at this title going, what the shit, Messiah? You're just going to dump some crappy video on the toilet gods of Rome just so Susan can flush it down the algorithm? Oh, wait a minute, Susan got fired. Honestly, I had the same concerns. But trust me, there's enough info out there on these guys that I didn't have to strain myself to get this video out. Okay, I'm done. But in all sincerity, while our Western society has chosen to merely relegate fecal matter and the disposal thereof as gross and or funny, the Romans, on the other hand, found it gross and or funny, but with deification. And believe it or not, poop is actually so complicated to these people that they invented not one, not two, not three, but something like 2.5, you'll see why later, gods relating to taking a crap. We'll go into each in a bit more detail, but let's outline who's who when it comes to the governing body of Uranus. Not the planet, I mean your literal anus. First we have Cloacina, goddess of sewage and toilets. Sterquilinus, god of manure, and Crepitus, god of flatulence, who was later identified with constipation and diarrhea and whatever else Pepto-Bismol claims to alleviate. It doesn't do a very good job. So yes, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, all those times you were screaming, "Oh God," on the crapper, you should have been saying, "Oh gods." And maybe this trifecta of hilarious deities would have taken pity on you and widened out your anus like you just dropped the soap in prison. You monotheistic bastards. So, without further ado, I give you, as so eloquently put by one of my commenters, who is the god Kaka-Doodoo Scooby Naruto, and what does he do? Yes, this is the timeline where I actually make that video. I'd say you're in hell right now, but unlike me, most of you don't live in Ohio. So, what most people don't realize about me, outside of Discord, is that in real life, I work at a water treatment plant. And while it is a far, far cry from the cleaning methodology we employ today, the Cloacina Maximus, namesake of this goddess, is an engineering feat of the ancient world which is ashamedly overshadowed by 3D triangles in the middle of the desert and baby sacrificing rocks in the middle of fucking nowhere. So the Cloacina Maximus is one of the oldest sewer systems the world over, and really, it can be thought of as one of the features which made Rome great. As prior to the system flushing away waste into the Tiber River, people either took a shit in the middle of the streets, or if you could afford it, you'd have a private latrine which had to be emptied out by hand. Typically by some poor slave schmuck who I guarantee would have rather been cleaved apart on the battlefield. Yes, plumbing systems existed before this point, but typically relied on shit falling out of a hole somewhere and letting gravity take over in hopes that it would end up in a stream somewhere and flow out of sight and out of mind. The Cloacina Maximus took all the guesswork out of it, and eventually perpetuated Rome's greatest innovation to date, the communal toilet, along with the communal sponge, a place which was the hype around town, where you get to sit there with all of your mates having a full-blown conversation while fully blowing out your asshole into a tiny hole in a wall before scrubbing it clean with a sponge on a stick someone else had just used right before you came in. Still not as bad as a McDonald's men's room in Kentucky. Or a ladies' room, like, anywhere. Cloacina is actually thought to be a derivative of the Roman goddess Venus, who in fact was a Greek deity under the name of Aphrodite. However, Cloacina may very well have been her own independent Etruscan deity prior to this. As the story goes, after the rape of the Sabines, which you can find out about over here, it's not as bad as you think it is said that the king of the Sabines, a gentleman by the name of Titus Tatius, had arranged for a peace settlement between his people and the Romans under the watchful eye of the goddess known as Cloacina, whose name means purification or cleansing. This agreement for peace was signed by a ritualistic cleaning of the Sabine/Roman bodies in a stream, which almost certainly turned into an orgy using myrtle leaves, the symbol for Venus. This stream was eventually widened and then used as the main depository for the Cloacina Maximus. Sometime after Titus was assassinated, yes, he was assassinated, this is ancient Rome, you should expect nothing less, the name Cloacina was adopted into the Roman language as Cloaca, literally meaning sewer, and Venus alone became the namesake of the project. taking the title Cloacina Venus, which must mean that I pray to Venus quite often, as every time I'm on the throne after eating Taco Bell, I cry out for mercy from whatever god may be listening. I must not be very pious, because now I have ulcerative colitis. To any of you thinking that it may be unsightly for the literal goddess of beauty and romantic love to be associated with the hot seat, just remember that she canonically hatched out of a testicle. But technically speaking, didn't we all?
Sit on the potty, sit on the potty, sit on the potty, push, push, push.
Now, to be totally fair to the most magic skeleton, I was not actually able to find the god of pee-pee. The closest I could find is a theory that Orion, yes, that Orion's, name was the basis for the word urine, Urios, though this is highly contentious, and his name likely comes from Oros, meaning a mountain in Greek, you know, because he's a giant. In any case, we actually do have a god of poo-poo. Well, rather, a god of manure. Sterquilinus is one of many gods involved in the act of agriculture, which, of course, to the Romans, who literally centered their 8-day weeks around the cultivation of crops and then taking them out to market, was held in exceptionally high esteem. That being said, it's likely that Sterquilinus was just a surname for the titan Saturn, who, by the good graces of the Romans, was reintroduced into the pantheon as a god of agriculture, but may have evolved separately into his own god alongside his siblings. Flora, the goddess of flowers, Pomona, goddess of fruit, and Ceres, goddess of wheat, which, fun fact, is where the word cereal comes from. Have fun trying to find somebody who is impressed by that fact. Later revisions to the god made him out to be the god of poop in general, not just animal feces used for crop fertilization. Most notably, the more modern sources seeking to discredit the pagans of the past. Okay, but why though? The Encyclopedia of Plants leaves this scathing review of Sterquilinus. It has been well observed by a French author that the Romans, in the madness of paganism, finished by deifying the most immodest objects and the most disgusting actions. A French author, you say? I'm sorry, but anyone from France calling something immodest or disgusting is a dictionary example of the pot calling the kettle some derogatory racial slur. But don't worry, the next guy had an even worse bias. Okay, so spoiler alert, this guy was almost certainly created by later century Christians to rag on paganism, which they were quite keen on shuttling out the door so that the church could exploit more money out of them. Cut their foreskins or whatever. We all know what they were up to. The origins of Crepitus are a bit vague, but he was originally supposed to be an Egyptian deity, first put into writing supposedly by Pope Clement I in the 1st century. Others among the Egyptians teach that intestinal noise ought to be regarded as a god. Please note, crepitus is a Latin word which can mean a large variety of noises like the
sweeps and the creeps.
However, in this context, the supposed 4th pope to ever hold office likely meant crepitus ventris, i.e. intestinal noises, i.e. farts. In fact, M. de Voltaire, yes, that Voltaire, in an attempt to make himself seem smarter than everyone else in the room, points out the obvious while inadvertently giving Crepitus the most hilarious name yet. It is certain that Deus Crepitus, the god fart, did not give the same sort of idea as Deus Divum, et hominum sator, the creator of gods and men. Yes, this floor here is indeed made out of floor. I can feel my IQ rising up to the heavens as we speak. Thank you so much, Voltaire. Since then, Crepitus has gained a lot of traction, though not necessarily for disproving the ancient pagan beliefs of the Romans, but rather to poke fun at the concept of religion in general. Charles-Pierre Baudelaire, yes, you'll notice a common theme of the French dirtying their hands in this sort of obscure religious backwash, wrote an essay called The Pagan School, which I will now read to you all in my obnoxious French accent you all seem to love for some reason. What are you expecting of the heavens or the folly of the public? Could it be a fortune swollen enough to raise altars to Priapus and Bacchus upon your mansard roofs? The most sane amongst you shall be the most cynical. They shall raise it in honor of the god Crepetance. Ho ho, I am extremely French. Oh jeez, I think I almost cut myself on all that edginess. I halfway expect him to close things out with a poorly drawn doodle of his Sonic OC that says "Do not steal" scribbled next to it in handwriting not unlike that of a 5th grader. Also, I'm kinda scared because Goblin is supposed to edit this one and it may see the birth of Messiah the Hedgehog. In which case, that is my OC, do not steal. Yes, essentially, when your job is supposedly to be the god of farts, you can expect a hell of a lot of mockery from your descended contemporaries, as is the case for the god of poop, and the goddess of toilets, and the Muppet who sends your wife home pregnant. And do I even need to mention this guy? Apparently I do. Priapus video is coming soon, folks. Just be patient. I have autism. Until then, I've been Messiahs and Mythology. I'm terminally depressed and slowly losing my sanity, so if you want to see what a descent into Magnus looks like, why not subscribe if you aren't already? Also, link in the description to my Patreon, where you can continue to fund this mini Project MK Ultra like these closet feds right over here. And with all of that being said, I gotta go pray to all 3 of these guys simultaneously for remission, and I hope you all have a God's blessed day.